Hey everybody, I'm Mah-Dry-Bread. You've already read the title of the video, so let's not waste any time. Single player, new game. We want to start in 1936, which is standard, and we want to pick a really easy country to learn with, which oddly enough is actually Nazi Germany. So we're going to pick the German Reich, select country, and on Iron Man mode, which means that no save scumming, no reloading old saves, as well as historical AI focuses, which I'll go into what that is later, regular difficulty. So we've loaded into the game, and this is what the main screen of the game looks like. You can see that we're paused right now in the top right. Before I go into teaching you the game, I just want to say that a commonly cited thing for people's worries about getting into this game is it looks so complicated with all these little units all over the place. How do you control all of them along these front lines and everything? Well, I'll go into this in greater detail later, but we just select our units, make a little group there, then I can just do that. And when I unpause it, then they're all going to just walk into the line for me. It is that simple to set up a front line. I just wanted to explain that real quick, and I'll go into way more detail on exactly how I did that later, but that's just so you know how easy it is to actually do that little thing that people seem to always be really worried about, how complicated that might be. So the first thing I want to do is just show you each menu and explain what it is we're looking at. It's actually not that complicated once you get used to it. So, starting from the left here, this is our political map here. We can select our national focuses, as well as see our leader, all of our little modifiers based on what country we're in. We can modify our laws and governments, and we can see what kind of government we have right now. So to go through this stuff one by one here, the important things right off the bat. This is your government type. Brown is fascist, red is communist, and blue is democratic. This shows the breakdown of each amount that we have in our country. That could be changed by other people trying to drum up support for those political parties within our country, or our own actions to try and flip our government type. There's also non-aligned, which is gray. Some countries should be gray around here. Hungary right now is non-aligned. There you go. We also have our laws and government. As we get political power, which is right up here, you get that naturally over time, we can start to modify our government to do things like changing our conscription laws so that we can have more or less manpower, which is free and available people to be trained up, or changing our mobilization laws. These things will make a bit more sense later. But this is where we can do little modifications to our political power to make us better at specific things. Again, not something to worry about too much yet. National focuses are something that is a very core part of this game. Every country in the game has national focuses, with many countries having unique ones to only their country, and some having generic ones. As you get more DLC, which this is a no DLC tutorial, you'll have more national focuses for more countries. So you can see these are all the unique alternate history type things you can do. Almost every national focus takes 70 days, and it doesn't take anything special either than cutting your political power gain in half. Although it's kind of assumed you always have one of these going, so in reality, not having one of these going is doubling your political power. For the most part, you're always going to have one of these going for the first half of the game or so. These are all interesting little things that will give you bonuses depending on your country. For instance, we could do the 4-year plan. Get some research bonuses to industry. I'll be showing you guys research very soon. Bonuses to building certain things. That branches out, and we could start going west wall, building walls in the west, or start going down here and get into our oil and rubber industry. Air innovations, we could be spending time on trying to make our air support better, or going into our more political things like remilitarizing Rhineland, like in real life. We could pick between befriending Japan, which they did in real life, or befriending China, which is alternate history. There's a lot of fun alternate history stuff in this. We could ally with the USSR and never declare war on them. We could do all kinds of things. Most major countries will have drastically different things they can do in here. You could do all kinds of wacky things like, as the United Kingdom, you could go fascist if you wanted. Have Oswald Mosley, I think that was the name of their fascist party leader, have him in control. You can do all kinds of fun things through the focus tree. Decisions. Now, this was just added to the game quite recently with the newest expansion, although everyone gets this, even without DLC. I have all the DLC turned off right now. This is where you can spend your spare political points on other things, mostly because political power didn't have enough uses previously. This is mostly a lot of things that will change your government type, try and keep people from changing your government to something you don't want it to be, or to help turn into something you want it to be, as well as to help your stability and war support through propaganda or improving worker conditions. Stability will help your factory output, mostly, so that you're getting more resources and you're keeping more of your resources. And war support is largely helping your mobilization speed, making your surrender limit lower, making it so your people don't want to surrender when things aren't going your way, and also giving you more command power, which will give you more options at war. So generally, stability helps you with production, war support helps you with morale type things. And different countries will have different things here. Everybody has these political actions and these propaganda actions, but you gain more things depending on what country you are. Research. This is another really big thing of the game. There are all these different research tabs, and there are these big research trees. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, basically everybody's always agreed on this one, is you immediately want to open. Most countries have 3 research slots. Major ones tend to start with 4, and some really impoverished ones starts with 2. The big opener you always do is basic machine tools in industry. You want electronic mechanical engineering in engineering for research speed. And you want construction 1 in industry. Whatever you do with the 4th one, that's up to you, but usually you do some kind of military thing. So the really quick overview of this, because these aren't going to be, anything I can teach you here isn't going to be as helpful if you don't know how to fight yet, but infantry is all about your infantry and your special forces, so about giving you better equipment for your infantry. Mobile infantry, which is getting them on trucks and whatnot to move faster with unique battalions. Special forces, which are people like Marines who are really good at naval invasions. Mountain infantry, who are really good at defending and attacking in mountains, and paratroopers, who can be sent in through specialized planes to get deep behind enemy lines, as well as some upgrades generally to all of your special forces. Support companies are companies you can attach to any battalion. Engineers are all about making it so you're better in rough terrain and you can entrench better for defenses on a big front line. Recon will help your generals pick the right counter tactic because they'll have better intel on their enemies, as well as having better idea of who you're fighting before you've gotten in the fight. Military police help a company occupy land without resistance cropping up. Maintenance companies will help your mechanical stuff not break down, like failure rate on tanks and whatnot. Field hospital will help make it so some of the people who would die can get back in the battlefield. That's good for keeping a battalion at a high experience level because their veterans are coming back into the fight, as well as minimizing manpower losses, so the field hospital is very important. Logistics company helps you have a larger amount of troops using up less supply. It's especially useful when fighting places outside of Europe, where the supply might not be as good. And Signal Company, which is all about reinforce rate, so helping your troops get back in the fight quickly and react quickly to things. Armor, this is all about your tank research and your light, heavy, super heavy, and eventually modern tanks. Artillery is, as you can imagine, all of your field artillery, your anti-air, rocket artillery, eventually for some mobile artillery, and anti-tank rifles. Doctrines I'll get into later. Naval research is all about getting your different kinds of ships. Air research is all about getting your fighters and your bombers. Engineering is about research speed, encryption and decryption, as well as radio towers for better intel, and eventually into atomic research and rocketry for the nuke, as well as other kinds of rockets. And industry is all about, of course, your industry. It's all about making the most out of the resources that you have when producing gear for your people, being able to build buildings quickly, being able to make the most out of the resources that you naturally have in your land, and in making synthetic oils and rubbers through plants. So, Now into the doctrines real quick. You get to pick one doctrine for land, naval, and air. So, there are 4 different doctrines here. I'll go over them incredibly quickly because I don't want to get bogged down too much in this. This really could be its own video. Mobile warfare is all about moving fast, hitting hard, and not giving them a chance to react. Superior firepower is all about having lots of artillery and making the most out of a small population. It's generally considered to often be the best choice. But certain countries are better at other things. Germany is especially good with mobile warfare. Grand Battle Plan is fighting kind of World War I style. It's all about taking it slow, large front lines, and well-planned battles. Mass Assault Doctrine is all about basically the Russia-China tactic of throw never-ending waves of people at them to defeat them. That's good for a country that has tons and tons of manpower, but not a very strong industry. So basically, the opposite of superior firepower, which is all about a strong industry, but not many people on the field. Naval Doctrine. We have trade interdiction on Naval Doctrine, which is all about submarines and hitting trade routes to try and knock out international trade over the water. Base Strike, which is all about focusing on carrier planes coming off of your ships. And Fleet in Being, which is all about having a big fleet, big battleships, and whatnot. The Navy is going to be its own episode if you guys ask for it, because naval combat is actually quite rare in this game and very complicated. So I'll make that into its own video if you guys are asking for that in the comments section. Lastly, we have Air Doctrine here. You have Battlefield Support, which is all about how your closed air support interacts with your ground troops, so it's all about supporting your ground troops. We have Operational Integration, which is all about tactical bombers, and having your bombers be good at both bombing runs on enemy buildings as well as ground support. And we have Strategic Destruction, which is all about your bombers laying waste to enemy buildings, whether those be bunkers or factories or whatnot. Generally, people tend to agree that Battlefield Support is most often the best choice, but in some instances, for instance, against heavily industrialized nations, Strategic Destruction is quite powerful at breaking a stalemate. Operational Integrity is often a very good choice if you don't have a very strong industry, and so you don't have much of an opportunity to diversify much in what kind of planes you have. You could just invest in bombers and try to get them to do as much as possible with a very light investment in fighters to try and protect them. So that's it for our research. We're going to go over to the next menu, which is Diplomacy. Now, Diplomacy, this menu doesn't help us much, but if we right-click on other countries, we can see our diplomacy with other countries. So we have France right here, for instance. We have some intel so we can see what focus trade they're going into right now. If we had better intel, we could see everyone they've also done, but we can see their whole tree here. We can see what they're doing, but not what they've done until we have better intel on them. You can see that, much like in other Paradox games, we have all kinds of diplomatic things we can do, like justifying a war goal on them, improving relations, stuff like that. And the points we use up to do these things are political power points. We could try boosting party popularity, try and make them more fascist, to try and have them have an internal coup or something like that. We can also go to their details page and we have a rough idea of how many divisions they have in their country, how many military factories they have, things like that. So, you know, you want to check this to see what governments they have, what laws they have, what kind of troops they have. Gives you general ideas on the relative strength of that country. Like, we know that France is much, much weaker than we are. We have way more manpower than they do. They have that many divisions, somewhere between there. We have only 30, but we can crew many, many more. We have many more factories in them. We generally know that with a little bit of a build-up, we could crush France pretty easily. We want to go over to trade now. This menu looks very complex, but it's not really. It's telling us that we're short on oil, we have plenty of aluminium, and we have too much tungsten being imported. So, yellow means you're importing more than you need. All you need is a positive number on anything. Green means you have a positive number. Red means you have a negative number. Now, when you're in the negatives on something, it means that you're producing things that require that much slower. If you're in the positives, it means that you're probably exporting some of this. You use civilian factories to import things. You basically trade away the production of those factories to import things. I believe it's one factor gives you 8 in most instances. If there's an alliance, that might be a different number. And people might be trading their factories for your use if they're using up some of your spare that you're giving away. How much you have spare and how much you're trading away is dependent on your export laws, which of course is over in the political menu right here. We have limited exports, so we're sending very few resources to market, which also means that we're holding on to a lot, but we have less to sell to other countries for extra factories. Construction menu, this is where we build buildings. You can see infrastructure, airbase, anti-air, radar station, all kinds of things here. In general, you're going to be building a lot of military factories, so you can see how many we have built in each place and how many we can build, as well as the infrastructure percentage. So if I were to queue up a few, you can see that in order, they're all going like this. The first 15 out of 15 factories are building the first one, the spares are building the second, and we run out, so these are just queued. You can hover over these and see when they're going to be completed, and you can see the breakdown on the percentages of what's speeding it up. So having construction research and whatnot would speed that up, as well as better mobilization. These military factories are what's making our gear for our troops. Civilian factories are what's building these. So civilian factories are used for trade. They're also used for building things. Infrastructure just got a big update in this new DLC, as well as to everybody who doesn't own the DLC, where infrastructure is no longer just the supply in an area and the speed at which you can move through the area because of railroads and whatnot. It also increases the amount of natural resources you get there. For instance, right here, we're normally getting 90 steel. As we increase the infrastructure, we'd be adding even more steel to that. So that's just another use for infrastructure. Infrastructure is separate from building factories. You can see all of these things take up the same slot here, like our naval dockyards, which is what builds our navy, our synthetic refineries. So we only have so much space, and we need technology to get more. Over here we have forts, naval bases, and coastal forts. Coastal forts help you defend on the coast. Land forts help you defend on the land. You can have up to 10 of them on a tile. And naval bases helps you dock more boats in that navy, as well as send more supply overseas. Lastly, we can convert factories from military ones to civilian and vice versa with this button here. And yeah, we're going to go on to production now. So this is our production line of everything that we're making. This is what our military factories are for. We can have it sorted by seeing individual ones, so there's 15 slots, see it by 5s or see it by 10s to help organize this. You can also turn off and on any category because this will get messy later in the game, so there are a lot of things you can turn off and on. So we're producing infantry equipment. We're making 29 a day, and if we wanted, we could put more factories on that. Now, for the sake of showing you how this works, we're going to start up another infantry equipment line here. I'm just going to drag this up near the top of the list. The factories always go from top to bottom in order, so if we were to run out of factories or queue up more than we had, it shows gray ones here, so it knows when we build more, it'll auto-assign them to that. You can see there's a big red bar here. This is our efficiency cap. So we can speed this up and get the cap higher through technology. This is when you start having factories on something, it's slow, and it takes a while to become efficient because they're trying to basically build the factory to be useful for producing that thing. So you can't just switch all these people to going straight to support equipment and have them be at full efficiency right away. It's to incentivize pre-planning a little bit. So we're going to just get rid of that production line. So you're going to have to learn how many things you need of everything to figure out basically efficient building of your economy. We can see here that we're just stockpiling infantry equipment, whereas we're upgrading our light tanks to level 2, which means we probably have old tanks, and as we build more, they're upgrading the old ones. We can also see our resources here at a glance. So we can see that although we have enough resources for all of these things, we don't have any rubber or any oil for these motorized, so they're being built slower. That's why over here is yellow. You can see lack of resources, 15% negative. So we're building these guys 15% slower. These are motorized vehicles. Next, we're going to go on to recruit and deploy. This is where we train new troops. We can set our priority for reinforcing and upgrading. I like reinforcing to be the highest priority, upgrading to be middle, and actually training troops to be lowest, so that the troops that we have already on the field, reinforcing and upgrading them are a higher priority than training up new guys. That's what I personally like. So we want to train some infantry, so we hit train on the infantry. Let's add some units to it. We're going to do 5 divisions over and over, infinite times. First, we set a location. We can have it anywhere in our core territory. It doesn't really matter where. We can change this at any point. This is where they deploy from. So we have it set right here. And if we want, we can click this circle and have them deploy, left click, to any general we have that already has orders. So they know the second that they get out on the field, go join that company and do whatever mission they're on. So we can see here how many resources we need. So there's not enough manpower or equipment for the 4 divisions. It's equipment that they need. And they'll start training here as they get their equipment. Whenever it maxes out, they come out. Or we can send them out early if they have their equipment but not their full training, although they'll be weaker and need to be trained on the battlefield, which can be dangerous, but if you need emergency people on the field, you can do that. Lastly, we have logistics. You probably won't be using this menu much. It's just a condensed, cleaner looking menu to see, hey, what am I lacking? I need more infantry equipment. I need more artillery. I need more support equipment. How much do I have stockpiled? You can see I have a little bit of light tank stockpiled, things like that. This is just a very quick overview of what your production, what your supply and demand is like. To quickly go over these top menus, by the way, political power, we know what that is, we know what these are. Manpower, this is how many available people you have to be recruited. Manpower is a very important statistic. You get this up through taking more core land and through having more steep conscription laws, which have other drawbacks, so be careful with that. You really want to make sure you don't run out of manpower, and this is why medics are so important. Your convoys is how many convoys you've built. These are the guys who do trade over the water for you. Enemies in war will probably try and attack these convoys. So that's used for naval trade. Factories, this just tells you how many factories you have grand total between all of your factories and dockyards. Command power is used for certain general abilities, which we'd probably get into in another video where I can show you more on war. Army experience goes up as you have military theorists in your government, or if you fight or do drills to train your troops. Use this to change troop layouts. Naval experience is for making custom boats. Air experience is for making custom planes, and all of your notifications and what you need to pay attention to is here. Let's quickly go into world tension. You can see it's at 0% here, and we can click on it. So this is world tension. Nothing has happened yet, and the only war going on is Italy versus Ethiopia. World tension goes up every single time a war breaks out. There was a really unfair annexation of land. Random events like the Marco Polo Bridge incident. Is that what that was called? I think that's what that was called. Might be called an idiot in the comments for that one if I got that wrong. But, you know, things that make the world tense make world tension go up. It's exactly what you think it is. Now, what are the consequences of world tension? It unlocks certain actions for countries. Now, in general, communists and fascists can pretty much do whatever the hell they want from the beginning. There are some national focuses that will require certain world tension, but for the most part, they kind of have free reign to do militaristic things early. Whereas a democratic nation like France or the United Kingdom, they need to have the world be tense enough to justify making a big faction or declaring war on someone, doing things like that that they don't have the special right to do through their focus trees. So they want world tension to go up quickly so that they can catch up with fascist and communist nations. Whereas fascist and communist nations want to keep the world tension low, or at least get as much done as they can while it's low so that they can get a head start on the democratic nations, because the democratic nations outnumber them. So that's the general idea of how that works. It's pretty much guaranteed that by the time that the world war breaks out, however it ends up breaking out in your game, the world tension is going to be very, very high. Non-aligned countries, like let's say Romania here, they also tend to have a lot of handicaps based around world tension. There's a lot they can't do until world tension is high. Generally, nobody is more handicapped than non-aligned people. Also, those historical AI focuses we saw at the beginning of the game that we had that turned on, that just means that every major country, either than our own, of course, whoever we're playing as, that's our choice, will have a preset amount and direction that they go into for national focuses. So if it's set to that, France will always go in the same direction for all of these until they run out of preset ones and just do whatever the hell they want. So generally, without your involvement, if you're some minor country and you don't get involved, if you have historical AI focuses on, for the most part, World War II will always break out in the same way around the same time. If you don't have historical AI focuses on, they go a random path and you get wacky stuff like Communist France without your own involvement. Let's go over really quickly how these general things work. I selected my troops, I left-clicked on one of these plus symbols, and we got our setup for our army here. So first thing we want to do is assign a commander. We can see all the commanders that we have. You can spend political power to get more down here. Now, this is a bit of a mess. It's probably hard for you to see right away, but this is something you learn over time. Let's just pick, we have generals here. A general commands your army. Capacity of 24 divisions before he starts having detriments. We have a list of his abilities down here, like this is Erwin Rommel. He has Trickster, he's better at reconnaissance. He's great, has a great experience factor for tanks because he's a panzer leader. He's good on attack and defense, not as good at planning or supply. We're going to select him, and there we go, 24 divisions. If we give him extra, he has detriments because it's too much for him to command. Now, let's say you start having a really big army and you have multiple commanders and you're fighting on some really big front, like you're fighting Soviet Union over here, who's really, really big, and you need more than 24 divisions, and it's getting to be a pain to manage all of them. Well, that is when you select your generals here. So we're going to shift and click to get both of these, and we're going to give them a field marshal. So we have a few field marshals here. We'll select one of them. The field marshal just rules over a bunch of our generals. This is so that we can do way bigger grand battle plan type things. Generally, you want one of these guys whenever you can. Also, you'll be able to level up these guys later. As they fight, they gain skill. So we have our whole little setup here. We can click on him and it will select every general under him, or we could select individual people and make battle plans. So I'm going to show you real quick battle plans here of how I did this. So we're just going to right click on delete, hit OK, that deletes all of our plans. So that all of our guys have nothing to do. They have the red exclamation point, they have no orders. So you don't need to know all of these yet. The in-game tutorial does an okay job of explaining these. All you need to know right off the bat for a European war is that front line is Z. You just click on a country's border and we have a front line. Our guys will know to spread out and try and cover the entire front line. We could also use edit and hold a right click on these to drag it around if we want to defend more or less area with a specific division. Then X is our offensive line. So I can make an offensive line, draw it with my right click by holding it, something like this. So I want to have my whole army push up to this river, defend across the river so that they have a hard time crossing, and we'll take these cities, which are these dots, as well as the capital of Warsaw. The lower a country's war support is, the more likely they are to surrender. So you need to take less cities for them to surrender. In general, you pretty much always need to take the capital, though. So I have these orders. If a war were to break out, I could tell them to, hey, hit the check mark, execute the orders. It says that they have a way inferior enemy. And then these troops will start deciding where and when to attack to try and follow out the order that you set. You can also, by default it's balanced, but you can tell them to more cautiously or more aggressively execute the battle plans. If careful, they'll pretty much only attack when they have a massive, massive advantage. Whereas when aggressive, they'll attack every time they get a chance very recklessly. Whereas on balanced, they'll attack when they think they have a reasonable chance to win the fight. They'll also try and get little pincer attacks where they can, attack from multiple directions to try and stretch the enemy's line thin. So that is something to worry about, of stretching your own front line thin. We could even change this, I want to change this right here, this attack line. I could change it to be something like that. Now, this would mean that I'm going across the river and not quite defending at the river, so they have an easier time attacking here. But at the same time, it means that we don't have troops all along here, we just have a little bit right there, and that'd be stretching our own troops less thin. All kinds of little things like that you'll learn and get better at the game through that. So I'm going to give you an extremely simple idea of troop division layout. So we're going to go to our recruitment and deployment, and we're just going to look at the edit page of our infantry division. Good God, you have no idea what any of this means. This is even largely gibberish to expert players because it is so vague how the numbers and math work out on a lot of this. I'm going to give you just a freebie here and show you a very common, very accepted layout for a great infantry division. So, the number you care about the most right now. Organization is how much damage they take before they have to retreat. That's important. You want that to be high. You care about soft attack and hard attack. Soft attack is your damage to non-armored targets. Hard attack is damage to armored targets. In general, breakthrough is your ability to attack an enemy and push through without getting hurt. And combat width is how many troops you can have in a fight. This depends on the train, this depends on how many divisions you have in and the width of the divisions. In general, you want them to be divisible by 2. More specifically, you want it to be 20 or 40. Most people agree that 40 is better because of the way combat works in this game. However, you might not have the manpower to do 40. So what we're going to do here, we have 9 infantry. We're just going to replace 2 with artillery. So we're at 7 infantry, 2 artillery. That gives us a 20 combat width, and this would give us a lot of soft attack. This is a really good infantry division. Support does not increase your combat width at all. This is adding extra dudes. You really want your engineering company, your recon company, and your support artillery. Later, you want a medic company as well as a logistics company once you have those researched. When you want to upgrade this to the 40 width, when you finally have enough supplies and manpower to do that, you add 2 more artillery, and then you just keep adding infantry until your width is at 40, and there we go, that'd be 40. So it costs army experience, which you get through either doing drills, which you just have a division here, and you tell it to do an exercise. So that will lose a little bit of manpower. You'll lose some, you'll lose all your organization, so you don't want to get attacked while you're doing an exercise. Preferably you want to do it at peace or not near the enemy. And this will get you a little bit of army experience as well, train those troops up a little bit. Or, more importantly, if you go to Theorist, you could spend some political power and get any kind of these theorists who give you daily army experience. Or when the World War breaks out, you're likely going to be getting very quick army experience just through regular old battle. Very quick rundown on using your Air Force, because it's actually quite simple. You can see that we have these airports around, and some of them are filled in, not these little hollow-looking ones. That means that there are planes there. We can see that there are 200 planes of 1,200 is how much that airport can hold. We just click on that. We go to our Air Force map down here. You can see F1 through 3 switches between default, which is land, Navy, and air. And we can see we have planes here. So these are some tactical bombers and some closed air support. They're both selected. This is the range that they can fly in. One can fly farther than the other. So we just tell them, hey, fly over Western Poland is where we want them to attack. And we have them selected to be set to the orders. They're set to no retreat. I'd rather they be set to normal operations. You know, fly if they're, fly home for repairs if they're too hurt. And we can do closed air support, strategic bombing, naval strike, and port strike. So this is just telling them what orders we want these specific planes to do. If we had fighters here, I'm sure we have fighters in one of these airports. Naval bombers here, I could have them fly over there, do naval strikes. I have fighters here, have them fly over northern France and do some air superiority and some interception. Real quick what all these things are. Air superiority is all about trying to shoot down other planes to make sure that we have the good intel, we have air superiority. It boosts the troops on the ground's ability to fight when it's mostly your planes in the air. It's also helping to stop enemy bombers and whatnot. Over here, we have interception, which is mostly trying to stop enemy planes from doing their missions. Closed air support, which is all about attacking ground troops to help your troops do better. Strategic bombing is bombing enemy buildings to try and make it so that, we break down their factories, their forts, give us an advantage in the long run there. Naval strike is trying to hit enemy boats if you're over the water, and port strike is trying to blow up their ports and their docks so that they don't have a place to station nearby and repair their boats. You can then pick whether they have normal operations, low intensity, or no retreat, as well as if they execute missions day and night, only at day, or only at night. It's safer at night, but you also get less done at night, so that's the trade-off there. That is all you need to get started on Hearts of Iron 4, though. If you guys want to see me do any more of this stuff on Hearts of Iron 4 where I teach you more things, please ask questions in the description. I'd love to make more videos on this. I also have an old playthrough of this that I started doing with my friend Aldrahill here on YouTube. I'll have that linked in the description as well as on the end screen here. I also did one of these tutorials last week for Crusader Kings 2 with no DLC, if you'd like to learn how to play Crusader Kings 2. I love that game. And I'm sure I'll be doing a new playthrough with all the DLC and everything with Aldrahill before you know it. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and until next time, have a nice day.